I
Mm,
witnessed my mother, who was the most wonderful and pure and tender-hearted soul I've ever known in my whole life,
mhm,
be unkind to herself.
mm,
And it's like this refusal to like, I have to fight against this like default setting in me that is to be harsh,
mm,
because I
mhm,
am the same little girl with the ringlet curls and the big blue eyes that I was when I was 4 years old. I'm the same
mhm,
girl, and she
mhm.
deserved kindness, and I deserve kindness now.
Welcome to another episode of the Preparing for Pregnancy After Loss podcast. This is your host, Natalie Basie, and I am with Brigid Harris. Welcome, Brigid.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, my pleasure and my honor. I love having people introduce themselves by asking them who they are, who they're being in this moment. If you'd like to share who you're being in this moment.
Who am I being? What a beautiful question. Um, well, I just said this to you just before we started recording, but who
Mhm.
I am being in this very moment is somebody who is wrestling with and practicing graciousness with
Mhm.
myself
Mhm.
and with other people.
Mhm.
I'm realizing that so much of my life until now has been surviving some very intense trauma and hardship, that graciousness was a way of being that I saw as a threat to my ability to persist.
Mhm.
It was like a softness that was dangerous.
Mhm.
I needed to be rough and tough and work hard and strive and survive. And now that's not serving me anymore. And so, because I'm trying to disconnect from that way of being that did serve me for so many years, there's been a lot of undue suffering, I think, in not being kind to myself.
Mhm.
And I know my belief is that that suffering is inevitable. And this is one area where maybe I'm suffering more than I need
Mhm.
to, because
Mhm.
I'm not being kind to myself, and I don't need to just survive anymore. And so who I am being is somebody who's very much practicing being kind and being gracious to myself
Mhm.
and other people. And it is a practice because it does feel very unfamiliar.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. It feels really, really precious to, like, I think of this touch in as being able to see a view into your world, and it feels really precious to, yeah, to be with you as that is the inquiry and the practice that you're in. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah. So we worked together in the past, and I'm trying to
We
remember.
did.
Yes. And
We
it's
definitely did.
years that we first met 4 years ago. I
It
remember.
was 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Shocking.
um,
Shocking.
how did you find me? I can't remember what that origin story is between the both.
So it's funny you asked this, because I had mentioned to a friend, I was like, oh, I'm gonna, meet with this awesome person who has a podcast. And they're like, well, how did you meet them? Have you ever met them in person? And I'm like, well, I know Natalie like in the most interesting of ways. And it's to me a very spiritual connection, which is, I think many in life are, but it's particularly spiritual in that like it was a lot of random connections and all like very what I perceive to be like spiritually grounded people.
Mhm.
Um and so you met, I don't even know where to begin. You met Kate,
Right.
and at the time she was, this was just like you were going through your own personal journey with,
Mhm.
birth and loss, and
Mhm.
I don't know the details of that, but she was working at the hospital,
Mhm.
and then you all must have stayed connected. And then one of my wonderful friends of many years is a spiritual practitioner, who I would say, is psychic and does tarot, and they're Black and queer, and they also are a DJ. And
Mhm.
anyway, my friend Keon, who was living in New Orleans at the time, did a virtual tarot reading for Kate, who had since left the East Coast and moved to back to Colorado, where she's from.
Mhm.
And Kian was like, I have a friend in Colorado who I think you would be like really like psychically connected with, and connected me. So I had like a blind friend date with Kate, who had been
Oh
connected
my
to you.
God.
And then we met and I shared a bit about my story, and she's like, I know this person, Natalie, who you would just, I think you would benefit a lot from what she has to offer. And that turned out to be true. So it was a super interesting spiritual
Oh
psychic connection. That's how I'll describe it.
oh my gosh. And I'll add
Hmm.
more to the connection between me and Kate. So she was doing, it wasn't like an internship, but something like an internship in New York. And
Hmm.
met her in the hospital in the midst of my first loss. And just like her presence was just like so precious for me.
Hmm.
And, in going back home and continuing the processing and the healing, I kept thinking of reaching out to her and had delayed that. And one day I was like, all right, let me just email her. And it turns out that it was like just before her email address would no longer work because her time there in her program would have ended. And I'm like, whoa, universe.
Hmm.
So just all of the things that happened in order for this to happen. I'm just really grateful.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
divine.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So is it that you reached out on, was it Facebook where we first connected
I
inside the
won I
community?
wonder if I emailed you.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly how we first communicated, but now I feel like we've been like email, like pen pals for years. So like obviously we see each other in a virtual space periodically, but like I feel like you and I will like email back, and just throughout the months we'll just email.
Mhm.
So I must have emailed you and we met. And um in 2021, I don't remember exactly what time it was, but I to backtrack a bit, my partner and I, my husband, we've, now been together almost 15 years. We've been married almost 10. And
Mhm.
it wasn't until a few years after we got married, we did a lot of like interpersonal work, a lot of soul searching, a lot of therapy,
Mhm.
to process like our respective childhoods and adolescence and just upbringing.
Mhm.
And we really were intentional before coming to the decision that we wanted to start a family.
Mhm.
And that's a whole different story. But, in early 2020, just pre-COVID, we decided, we're going to start trying. Like, this is very important to us. And my very first pregnancy in August of 2020 turned out to be ectopic, and I required emergency surgery, which
Mhm.
was extremely traumatic. And I feel really shaped my whole experience of pregnancy and fertility and just everything from then on. It felt sort of like I had been robbed of something before it
Mhm.
even started.
Mhm.
Um, and then I went on to have many other losses,
Mhm.
all kind of different and traumatic in their own
Mhm.
way. But I think I was just, it really rocked my world.
Mhm.
Even as somebody who I think, as a result of trauma, often looks for the worst thing to happen in certain scenarios, this was one instance that I can clearly think of where I had pure and unadulterated hope for the future. There was
Mhm.
no doubt in my mind that the news of this positive pregnancy test and of this, new life that had come forth was going to be positive. There was never a thought in my mind that it wasn't going to work out, that this life wasn't going to come to be.
Mhm.
So when that happened, it sort of was like this shift happened in me where I was like, "Oh, that's right. You can't have hope or you
Mm,
can't want for the future something without anticipating that the worst thing it will happen."
mhm,
And so I feel like I had a moment that was sort of different from how I was in the world in every other instance because I wasn't worried and I didn't have fear or anxiety that the worst might happen, and then it did. And
mhm,
then I just realized, and that's why, when I got connected with you, I was like, I really need to sit down with this and hold this. And
mhm,
then, we met and you had a course come up and you're like, I think this is something you might be interested in. And it was a
mhm,
12-week course. And I was like, you know, I need to do this. I
mhm,
consulted with my family about it. I was
mhm,
like, this is really important to me,
mhm,
and I'm a very intuitive person. So I was just like, I need to trust my gut that this is what I need to do. And I did that with you and a few others. I mean, you led the course and,
mhm,
facilitated it for this group. And yeah, it was beautiful and
mhm,
transformative. And I remember it like it was yesterday. So
mhm.
yeah, that's what I'll say.
Wow. Can you share, I guess, like stepping into the container of that course, can you share things that you're remembering from that or ways that you've experienced that transformation?
I think for me, I don't know, maybe it's my Catholic upbringing. I've talked to you about this. I deal just in general with a lot of guilt and a lot of shame.
Mm,
And I know there's a distinction between guilt and shame, where guilt is like I've done something wrong and shame is I am wrong. But I
mm,
deal with both. And
mm,
for me, the confirmation bias of somebody who's dealt with recurrent pregnancy loss and infertility has been, "Oh, that's right. Like, this is why you should have shame because you can't do this thing that everyone else is doing."
mm,
And while I know that's not true, if left unchecked,
mhm,
I will spiral into the deep and dark abyss that something is wrong, that I am somehow not a whole person,
mm, mhm,
that I am like deeply flawed when I know that's not true. And so the opportunity to be in the course with other people who were having a similar experience, other women who were having a similar experience, really allowed me to like confront that in a way that was safe and nurturing,
mhm,
which even that is hard, right? Like sometimes when the shame is so deep, it feels like you don't even deserve that space. Like I'm
mhm,
undeserving of like being nurtured and cared for and seen in this way, but I just knew I had to fight against this instinct that
mhm,
I was somehow flawed or imperfect or incomplete or undeserving. And
mhm,
just to really be in the space where people were going to hold this thing that was so hard to carry on my own and that was so hard to move through the world with on my shoulders. I think
mhm,
I've talked like I have a history of mental health in my family. I've lost a lot of family members to depression, and for that reason, and I, suffer with anxiety and depression throughout my
mhm,
life. I've often felt like I'm an advocate for mental health,
mhm,
even if not by choice. And now the same feels true for infertility, where I'm like, I didn't choose this, or my belief is that I didn't choose this.
mhm,
But now I'm here and this is my reality, and it's my responsibility to make it so that like we can be in community
mhm,
in the open, you know. Not to say that the value of a group like this wouldn't still be there. It's supremely valuable to be in that safe space and that safe community, but
mhm,
I really do feel like it's part of like my personal mission and kind of like a soul contract to be in the world talking about what it means to live with depression, to
Mhm.
live with mental illness, to live with the experience of infertility and pregnancy loss. And that's complex in its own way as well, right? Because I'm like,
Mhm.
well, I want to be that person, and also that requires emotional energy. So this was a space where I felt like there was no right or wrong way to show up. I didn't have to be this like perfect advocate. I didn't have to educate people on what a miscarriage was or what infertility was, or I could just really show up as my whole self, raw and unapologetic,
Mhm.
and it was wonderful.
Mm. Wow, I'm so glad I asked. And then what? What happened next?
Well, I have so at this by the time we did this course, which would have been, fall of 2021, at that time I had just suffered my third pregnancy loss, which was particularly difficult um in that things were progressing normally,
Mm,
and when I had gone for multiple scans, things looked okay, and towards the end of my first trimester, it was confirmed that
mm,
the pregnancy was not viable.
mm,
And so, I was devastated.
mm,
I It's unlike any other experience I've ever had in my life, where I think I'm a water sign, I'm a Cancer. I have a very tough exterior, and I've really made it through my life by being like resilient, which
mm,
sometimes I resent, but that is really like a hallmark of who I know myself to be and how I know other people perceive me. And this was an instance where to be pregnant now for a third time in 1 year, and to be told the pregnancy wasn't viable, and to be confronted with the decision of, how we would move forward with letting the pregnancy go.
mhm,
I just realized how fragile it was to live in this constant loop of being hopeful. I had
mm,
never in my life I had never in my life been in a situation where I was constantly having to decide and to decide again and to decide
mm,
again and to decide again that I'm going to be hopeful. I'm going to
mm,
do this thing. I'm going to put myself out there and be vulnerable, and I'm going to hope that it works out. And I'm going to hope it works out. And I'm going to hope it works out. And I realized that living in the space of having hope was so much more fragile than being this tough and resilient, and I'm just going to like power through this hard thing sort of like persona that I had developed. It required a level of, like, vulnerability with myself that I had never experienced. And this pregnancy, I don't know, I felt very connected with. In my heart, I believed this was a little girl. I dreamt of this little girl. She came to me.
mm,
She had a name, and I really got into, like, the ritual of, I need to release this. I need to, like, you know in the spiritual realm, be with this soul and thank this soul for coming, and then let this soul go, to hold space for myself for this loss I was going through, and to make space for whatever new soul might want to come through. But it was very, very hard, and medically complicated. And at the time I started your course, I had just gone through this loss, and I was feeling really raw. It had been 1 whole year and 3 pregnancies and no babies, and I was just, like, kind of on my knees, like, I will do anything to, like, escape this massive void that I just see, like, before me. I just was like, "I need to fill this hole with something." I am just, like, pleading for, like, everything the group created me really filled this void and helped me to, like, reminded me of my wholeness, not that
mm,
I was ever not whole, but it really reminded me of that. And, you had very generously like created time for all of us to meet with you one on one outside of the group to kind of, work through things we were remembering or discovering for the first time. And
Mhm.
I remember this was right around the time I'm big into like pagan holidays, so or like it was right around the winter solstice, which
Mhm.
happens to be like I was born like summer solstice, so this is like my half birthday. It's like the darkest time of year. I don't know. I was born on a new moon, so I think of like the darkness being a place like rich, fertile for like planting new
Mhm.
life, new
Mhm.
ideas for creating. And I remember you saying, like, let's meet. And I don't remember if you told me that you wanted to do a meditation of sorts, but I remember showing up and I don't think I knew what to expect. Similar to this conversation, right? We're just like intuitively moving through this. And it was very much like that. And you led me through this meditation where all I remember is like I can close my eyes and be back in this space that you helped me arrive to. And I was in a circle with like my ancestors, with my mother who's passed, with her mother, with my father's mother, with all these women who came before me.
Mhm.
And there was this little girl who you know, I had just gone through this pregnancy. I had just lost this pregnancy and I knew it was this little girl and she was there. And I remember you saying like these people are all around you and they're encircling you and they're loving you and they're pouring into you. And I remember you saying, like, they have something in their hands and they're passing it to you. And what are they giving you? And it was a rose. I will never forget this. And it was just the feeling of being with them where I was like, I knew that every child who never came to be Earthside was with them and was meant
Mm.
to be with them and was never meant to be with me. And I knew that I was like supremely protected, that there was truly nothing I needed to worry about
Mhm.
because the survivalist in me was always, what can I do? And I'm still very much in that mode right now as I deal with, recurrent pregnancy loss. I'm still very much like, I need to do what I can do. I need to, and any clawing at like life to just like, I will do whatever it is. And it was very much the feeling of like, there's nothing to do. There's
Mhm.
only to be still and to know that you are safe and protected and whole and that like what's meant to be will be. And I became pregnant I would have to look at the calendar when we met that particular time in December of 2021, but I was pregnant within days of that meeting and I didn't
Mhm.
know obviously until a month later. And it was one of now 6 pregnancies that was, resulted in a child being born, who's my son, who's now 2.5.
Mhm.
And I'm not to say I'm giving you credit for how that all came to pass, but I really do believe just as like divine as the timing was and all the connections were for us to have met, I really do believe that being part of that group and that interaction that I had with you was very much a part of the story of how my son came to arrive here.
Mhm. Mm.
And yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you retelling the story of the that guided experience brought tears to my eyes because I remember the field that you were in. I remember the women who were there. Ooh.
It's reminding me I have a therapist who's wonderful and
Mhm.
she and I have recently, she's helped me to really reframe this idea of letting go. And it's so funny because I'm not like a huge tarot expert or anything, but I drew a card before this and it was the death card, which is a
Mm.
major arcana card. I've never drawn this card ever. And it was the death card reversed, which is very much about letting go and
Mm.
like seeing what's no longer serving you and really getting in touch with that. And so that theme is really present for me right now, which is my therapist was like helping me think about this letting go.
Mhm.
And I think the letting go is such like a counterintuitive way of thinking when it comes to fertility.
Mm.
Because whether it's fertility around pregnancy or fertility around creating something new,
Mhm.
art or business or relationship, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
when you think of creating, you don't think of letting go. You think of holding on so tight. Whatever it is, you want to hold on to it.
Mhm.
And that's totally my default setting is I have, for whatever reason, I have to cling to whatever it is. And I'm realizing both in this card I just drew and in many conversations with my therapist, like letting go is essential. And
Mhm.
the reframe that I've found is so helpful is that letting go is not giving up.
Mm.
Because in my mind, letting go is like, that's it. You failed. You didn't do the thing you sought out to do. You've
Mhm.
given up. You didn't you didn't succeed. It's very black and white. And I see letting go, or I'm trying to see letting go now as being more gray. It's not get there's nothing I've given up on.
Mhm.
Everything I want still holds true, but I have to like let it go
Mhm. Mm.
to release it.
Yeah. Ooh. Wow. And what's coming to mind is that that thing that's being created through us or in collaboration with us, it also has its own energy and path and desires and intentions. And yeah, what does that collaboration look like? How do we show up and how do we release the thing so it can be what it intends to be?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of like a Western or cultural conflict with
Mhm.
fertility in particular. Obviously,
Mhm.
that's what we're talking about. Like I I think in Western culture there's this, overarching theme of like personal responsibility.
Mhm.
That if you succeed, you've done well, like you're morally good, and if you
Mhm.
fail, you've done poorly and you're morally bad.
Mhm.
And to your point, there's no personal defect that
Mhm.
leads to somebody who has had a pregnancy loss or the loss of a child or has
Mhm.
dealt with infertility because like on some level in the spiritual realm, like these beings like are all coming for different reasons or not coming for different reasons. And it has nothing to do with us.
Mhm.
So letting it go is also kind of funny because you're not letting anything go. Like they're doing what they need to do, regardless of what you do. But it does feel like, you know, to go back to the point about being in community, being in the group, in the space that you created, it was such a safe place to be because I didn't need to feel
Mhm.
the projection of other people,
Mm.
which whether they knew it was there or not energetically was this feeling of me thinking, do they think I've failed?
Mm.
Do they think that I'm somehow like a less qualified, a less valuable
Mm.
woman, wife, mother, you fill in the blank because I
Mhm.
couldn't do this thing?
Yeah.
And still, as hard as that is to hold, I still see value in like screaming from the rooftops about my experience with loss,
Mhm.
including most recently I had a second ectopic pregnancy last fall. Um and my due date would have been just on Monday, May 5th.
Mhm.
And I decided I was going to work that day, but I was going to stay home. And I was joining a meeting virtually. And I just said to my teammates, I'm feeling really sad today. Today would have been my due date for my last pregnancy.
Mhm.
And, maybe culturally we might perceive that as like, oh, oversharing or, oh, that's so awkward, so uncomfortable. But I'm like, why shouldn't I show up as this human being that I am having a very human experience?
Mm,
How other people receive what I'm telling them is none of my business. Me making space for a thing that's real for me and that feels heavy to hold is
mm,
worth saying, regardless of how I feel others might perceive it. And I say
mhm,
that with such confidence and conviction, and it's
mhm,
hard for me. Even though I know it's true,
mhm.
I wrestle with it and I ruminate about it and I wonder what do people think about me, and I know I need to do it still because there's just so many people suffering in silence.
So many, so many. Yeah. Mm, mm. So grateful for your sharing. Yeah, I'm remembering in the midst of my first loss when I was sharing it with people, they were like, "Oh, me too. Yes, let me tell you about my loss." And I'm like, "Why does
Ugh.
no one talk about this?"
Mhm. Yeah, that's come through for me so clearly. I don't
Mm,
think I've ever been as in touch with being a feminist or a womanist as I have since
mhm,
deciding I wanted to become a mother.
mm,
It has never become so clear to me the
mhm,
weight that women and femme people carry
mhm,
just by virtue of existing.
mm,
And it sounds silly to be like, I didn't realize before, and maybe it's my privilege, but there was something that just like the stars aligned and were like, oh, this is this is part for me,
mhm,
it became clear to me this is part of the reason why you're here or why I'm
mm,
here. This was the voice, like this is why you're here. Is
mhm,
because generation just those same women who you called into this circle that we did this meditation with, those
mhm,
generations in my family lineage and in every other family lineage, when you look back on these generations, like it's been a millennia of women who have suffered. And
mm,
I feel like it's my right and privilege to get to scream these things from the rooftop because
mhm,
they didn't get to,
mhm.
or they did at a time where it wasn't received, or I don't know. I do feel it's so necessary because why should we
Yeah.
have to go through this and then go through it and then as you tell people be like, oh yep, I went through that same thing, and you're like, why didn't I know this?
Mhm, mm, mhm. I'm curious what your pregnancy was like. Obviously, there have been different pregnancies. What was the
Yeah,
pregnancy like with your son?
my sweet son.
Mhm,
I do have to say, I'm just gonna name this. I have a lot of guilt I'm working through as somebody who has experienced pregnancy loss and infertility and has a child who's here with me. I feel like almost less entitled to share about my experience of grief and loss as somebody who does have a child. And I recognize that, depending on where folks are as they listen to this, that might be hard to hear. But I'm so thankful for him, and he's such a gift to me.
mhm,
My pregnancy was really mostly uneventful. It was really normal. I have always been and will always be considered high risk because of my past losses and complications. So, more monitoring. Um, but it was really, really very special. And God, there's so much I could say. It was beautiful. My pregnancy was uneventful, special,
mhm,
beautiful. And uh I really tried to lean into the beauty in it even when it felt hard, because I know, not everyone who wants to have that experience is able to currently or may ever. And so I was really trying to hold space for the fact that it was just this tender and fleeting time that,
Mhm.
many don't get and that I may never get again. And so I was very grateful to have that experience. And then childbirth was a different story, much more complicated, much more eventful, but my pregnancy was really great.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Anything that you'd like to share about your childbirth experience?
Ooh, yeah, it's almost like I don't even know, like, I'm a talker, so and I like to tell stories. I could tell every detail, like, I think most people can who've had that experience, like,
Mm.
it's very visceral, you can really remember it. Um, but what I'll say is, I was in late my water broke and my son wasn't born for 72 hours, and, it was a very high risk situation, and I feel that the fact that we both came out, like,
Mm.
healthy and alive was had so little to do with me. And I wouldn't say I'm a faithful person, I think I'm spiritual, but I just know I would say I'm agnostic. I know there was, like, some divine intervention there,
Mm.
um, because I developed an infection and,
Mm.
my son, was born vaginally and I lost quite a lot of blood and my placenta wouldn't detach.
Mm.
And so I was rushed for emergency surgery to have a DNC. And I later found out that they almost needed to do a hysterectomy to kind of like save me in the situation. And so there was a lot that I could have never anticipated. And it was scary and hard, and I would do it again.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I'm really thankful to all the healthcare workers who do this every day. It's incredible.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
there's an interesting theme though with the thinking to the concept of letting go because there's something. It was interesting because the fact that my placenta wouldn't detach from my body, the thing that held my son and that fed him and grew him wouldn't
Mhm.
leave my body was
Mhm.
such an interesting thing to think about because my son was my fourth pregnancy
Mm.
and the three pregnancies prior my body couldn't hold on to or held
Mhm.
on to it improperly, right? With like an
Mhm.
ectopic pregnancy, like my body couldn't hold the pregnancy. There was
Mhm.
like we weren't sticking. Something
Mhm.
wasn't happening there. And then to hold my son and to carry him full term and then the thing that held him that my body created didn't want to go. I haven't fully worked out that
Mhm.
yet, but so interesting that like
Mhm.
the thing my body created, that helped to give him life, like didn't want to leave me.
Mhm.
Feels so interesting. And he was born on the 25th of September. We left the hospital on September 27th,
Mhm.
which happens to be my father's birthday and also happens to be the day that I left the same hospital 1 year prior
Mhm.
when I had had my last miscarriage
Mhm.
before meeting you. I had a DNC and
Mhm.
I was at that same hospital 1 year to the date prior to leaving the hospital with my son. So I like I don't know if you ever wish like you could have somebody just like taking video of your life. Like I wish I could see myself leaving the hospital the day of that DNC where I was just heartbroken that this pregnancy, wouldn't be and then to leave the hospital 1 year later with a healthy newborn.
Mm.
It's hard to even believe that's real. And I wish I could see it, even though I know it's real. And I'm saying it to you, it really happened. But
Mhm.
yeah, just kind of interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'm thinking about what you just shared with the placenta still holding on or not wanting to leave the body. And it's like I'm just in a space of awe thinking of the body and like almost like the poetry of the body, how the body can respond in different ways based on whatever is going on, and how there's always some mystery to it that we might never really know.
Yeah. Mystery is, I need to tap into the mystery because I think that feeling that you're describing is so beautiful to sort of be in awe of like how all these things work perfectly together.
Mhm.
Because some of that mystery or that feeling of being awestruck by the body can, I feel like, can be lost or can be robbed by the experience of infertility or loss, where, at least for me, I'm always looking for something to be wrong. I even
Mm,
said this to my husband the other day. I wasn't feeling well, and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me.
mm,
Not not, oh, I'm feeling an uneasiness in my body. Just like, what is wrong with me?
mm.
And that's the shame, right? There's
Yeah.
something wrong here with me.
Mhm.
Not I'm having the experience of dis-ease or
Mm,
discomfort.
mhm.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting reframe to think of the body as being like mysterious and wonderful and awesome because it is.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I find that yeah, I've survived by being so hard on myself,
Mm,
and it's just not working anymore.
mhm.
And even though I have my son, I'm still working on it all the time.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. When or how did you start noticing how hard you've been on yourself?
Um, so I've been writing a lot lately,
Mhm.
and I think it's often easy to like practice kindness when we're thinking of ourselves as young children.
Mm,
And it's helpful for me to think about myself as being a younger version of myself when practicing kindness because she
mhm.
and I are the same person. And
Mhm.
so if I can't lend myself kindness when I look in the mirror, I know for a fact I can lend myself kindness when I was 4 and 8 and 12 and 17 and 25 and 30.
Mhm.
All these very specific ages where I went through hard things. I think it goes back to I see life as sort of like a dream state. And I find myself never learning anything newly. I think you also described this as being like sort of a channel for like messages to come through that you're like, you have the humility to know that this is not me saying this, but I'm going to say it because it's coming forth. And
Mhm.
I so admire that. I don't know that I have the same humility. I'm like, this is my idea. But I think my version of that is sort of like, I'm here. My soul came here to do something, to learn something, to remember something. Remembering to me feels like a big part of my experience.
Mhm.
And a lot of the things I'm remembering, maybe it's from a past life, maybe it's, I don't know. You can make meaning of whatever you think that might mean. But for me, remembering is like, I think about like souls who choose to come here as needing to learn something. And I think my soul needed to learn a handful of things. There's a lot of themes.
Mhm.
And I think one of those themes for me that I'm remembering and I keep coming back to is like, I'm here to heal myself,
Mm,
and I'm here to heal other people. And when I say heal, I don't mean like we're not selling snake oil, there's no magic cure, but in the storytelling, in the sharing of my experience, that there will be any ounce of healing by someone who receives the message I have to share. Like
mm,
a mutually healing experience. It heals me to share it and it heals other people to receive it.
mhm,
And so, even though I feel like saying that I have shame and naming what my shame's about in a public forum is so hard, and I'll ruminate about should I have done that? And I'll
mm,
ruminate about that was so vulnerable. Like, did it cost me more than I gained to do that?
mm,
I know in my soul, I intuitively know that that's like what I'm here to do.
mhm,
And I think an example of that is, I'm looking at a photo of her right now. I
mm,
lost my mother to suicide when I was 17 years old.
mhm,
And I really do believe it's her legacy and the legacy of others I've lost the same way, other women in my family, to heal myself and to be kind to myself. Because I
mm,
witnessed my mother, who was the most wonderful and pure and tender-hearted soul I've ever known in my whole life,
mhm,
be unkind to herself.
mm,
And it's like this refusal to like, I have to fight against this like default setting in me that is to be harsh,
mm,
because I
mhm,
am the same little girl with the ringlet curls and the big blue eyes that I was when I was 4 years old. I'm the same
mm,
girl, and she
mhm,
deserved kindness, and I deserve kindness now.
mhm,
And it's also this deprogramming, right? That this Western culture gives us of like, if you're good, if you check this
mm,
box, if you do this thing, there's a formula to winning, to succeeding, to having what you want. And that's just not true.
mhm,
It's just not true. I'm not arguing necessarily that there's not free will. I'm not going to get into all that. But I do think that like life happens and you can do and you can toil away and you can try to feel like you're in control of everything. And
mhm,
still life is going to happen.
mhm,
And we get to choose how we respond to that, and we get to practice kindness towards ourselves and others. But the thing, I think the thing that has really shifted for me is like, oh, this is coming up for me on a loop.
mm,
This is not the first time I've been unkind to myself, but
mhm,
I'm suffering disproportionately.
mm,
I believe I believe in this like Buddhist idea that like you come to this earth and you're not immune from suffering. It was one
mhm,
of the reasons why I wrestled with wanting to start a family was like I knew I wasn't going to be a perfect mother, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to protect this person from life. Life was going
mm,
to happen. And I
yeah.
decided for me that life felt worth doing. And so if life is worth doing for me, I think it'll be worth doing for whichever soul decides to come here. And I won't protect him from all the pain of the world and all the suffering. He's going to suffer. He's going to have hardship, just like I have. But it doesn't need to be disproportionate. We don't need to pile the suffering on to what's already there. I don't need to be unkind to myself. There's
Mm,
nothing to be gained,
mhm,
you know? And also I can honor the fact that like to be unkind and to be hard on myself helped me survive some really, really hard times in my
mm,
life.
mhm, mm. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thanks for letting me share.
Yeah. And by the way, you don't have to hold any stories back. I've heard you mention a few times that you love to
Well,
this.
I'm so, you know this, Natalie, that I'm Irish, and I think Irish people, we like to say we have the gift of gab. I could talk and talk and talk. I'll tell you the most long-winded story. It is hard. It's hard too, because I'm so aware of the fact that other people are going to hear this, and I'm like probably holding back in that I'm like, well, and I know you said you can edit and whatever, but I don't know. I'm always so mindful of like, and maybe part of this was growing up in proximity to folks with very like acute mental health stuff is like
Mm,
how how am I showing up and how is it affecting other people, which I think is like a superpower, and also like, you know, makes me
Mhm.
maybe somewhat of an overthinker.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say the average episode is probably 90 minutes long. So people are listening as they're driving, as they're going for a walk, as they're working out. So
Mm.
I would say just share as much as you'd like to share.
Yeah, so well, I'm at this point now. So I had 3 pregnancy losses before my
Mhm.
son, and then my son was born, and I gave my body a rest, and then he turned 1 year old, and I was like to my doctor, tell me I have the green light to start trying again. She was like, you do. And I was actually pregnant this time last year. We were flying back to Milwaukee we lost my husband and I lost one of our best friends, and we went back for his funeral, and it was just a year ago last May, and we were flying back from that. His funeral was on Mother's Day,
Mhm.
and we were flying home, and I found out the next day I was pregnant, and I was
Mhm.
like, of course. Naturally, our best friend passed, and now there's new life. I feel like this happens, right?
Mhm.
My first pregnancy actually, that ended in an ectopic and my tube rupturing and the emergency surgery. I was first pregnant after my father-in-law died. Like
Mhm.
within weeks of him passing very unexpectedly at 56, I became pregnant. And so of course I was like, yeah, George passed away and now I'm pregnant. And it was on Mother's Day, and this is so divine. And I remember flying back from Milwaukee, and I have photos holding my son. He's asleep in my arms, and I'm looking out the window, and everything in Colorado is green, and it's raining, and the song
Mhm.
comes on, and I'm just moved to tears. I'm crying. This was the day
Mhm.
before I found out I was pregnant, and I was just
Mhm.
like, it was such like this full circle moment. I
Mhm.
just watched um the mother of our best friend bury her son, and here I am holding my tender, sweet, you know, toddler in my
Mhm.
arms and listening to this beautiful song. And I was like, it was just like overwhelming. And then I found out I was pregnant the next day, and
Mhm.
um the pregnancy, it was another loss, and then I was pregnant again a few months later, and it was another ectopic pregnancy, and I haven't been pregnant since, though I have been trying, and now we're at this point where we're considering IVF, and I'm really confronted with the fact that it feels like you're sort of robbed of the spontaneity of the joy of finding
Mhm.
out you're pregnant and having a healthy pregnancy. I
Mhm.
don't want to choose. And I
Mhm.
hate to say that I feel like I'm playing God, but I feel overly involved in this thing that I wish would just
Mhm.
happen.
Mhm.
I don't want to have to be confronted. It's just like this constant, and I don't mean to complain. It's such a privilege to have access to like great healthcare and to even have the option of considering doing
Mhm.
IVF and to have access to a reproductive endocrinologist. Like it is such a privilege. And still there's the weightiness of, okay, now we have to do this test. Okay, now we have to wait for this result. Now we have to do this phone call. Now I have to check this email. And it's like, it's counterintuitive, right? Because I feel like I often feel dysregulated in my body. And I think I've
Mhm.
described to you, I've often had a disconnect with being in my body.
Mhm.
It's like sometimes I feel like I've avoided myself, and a big part of myself is my physical being. Because if I were to drop into my body, I would feel the weight of like the many years I've lived and the hardship I lived. It's like there's definitely a disconnect. I totally live more in my mind than my body. I know that to be true.
Mhm.
Um, but it's interesting because when I feel dysregulated, I'm like, well, this isn't helping my fertility. And then I feel dysregulated in the stress of like navigating this. And then I'm like, it all feels too much. And so I'm kind of just like taking a break from that and giving myself the space to explore other ways of like healing my body and being with my body while like we wait to see if, another pregnancy might be in the cards. And
Mhm.
I think there's also um like an urgency that comes with like our biology, our evolution to like, I need to be pregnant. I'm, 34,
Mhm.
I'm turning 35, I'm gonna be geriatric pregnancy and all these other things. Like there's such this like buildup of stress and anxiety and emotion and feeling dysregulated that just like doesn't go hand in hand with fertility. And I hate saying infertility. I meant to say that at the top of this.
Mhm.
Infertility feels so yucky coming
Yeah.
off my tongue. It feels yuck. Like when I think infertile,
Mhm.
it doesn't call to mind anything nice.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to rebrand that, Natalie. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to,
I've had a experience. It's like it also sounds final, like this is who we
yeah.
are. And I'm like, no, 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 this is an experience or an imbalance, or we don't know what the hell is happening, but
We don't know. And let us talk about that. I'm in my womanist era of like, why don't women and birthing people know until it comes time to like start trying for a family that they
Mhm.
have endometriosis or
Mhm.
PCOS, or why isn't this just part of women's health that
Mhm.
we're assessing these things from childhood, adolescence, and so on? Like what,
Mhm.
why isn't this being studied? Like it's just like, oh, okay. Like this isn't my fault, this is
Mhm.
I'm part of a system, and the system has not necessarily been designed to serve people
Yeah.
like me.
Mhm.
So that can alleviate some of the shame, I think, for me and others listening who might have a similar experience. So, but yeah, it feels like very final.
Mhm.
Like you're like you've got a stack of papers on your desk and you're stamping with the big red stamp, like infertile. Like it's not
Mhm.
true. It's just
Yeah.
not true.
Yeah.
And how is it that I've had, and many others will have this experience where you've had all this testing done and the testing is inconclusive? What does that mean? No answer is not an answer. There's no answer. So, yeah.
Mhm. Mm. I'm curious, what's been some of the lessons you've experienced through motherhood? Some of the lessons and some of the gifts.
Oh my God. I need to write these things down. Um, well, I think the lessons are the gifts. I don't know. I think they're probably synonymous, right? At least as I'm sitting here thinking about it. I think like, yeah, again, the lessons and the gifts. I think sorry, I got so lost. There's so many things I could say. I think the lessons, it's a long list, lessons and gifts.
Mm,
The first thing that comes to mind is the reason why it took me so many years to make the decision that I wanted to become a mother was because I felt like I was a deeply flawed and broken human being. I felt like
mm,
I wasn't good enough to be a mom,
mhm,
that whatever new life was going to come forth deserved better than I could give.
mm,
And I have to honor that that comes from a place of love. That's because I take so seriously the job of being a parent. I see that now, but at the time I didn't. And I
mhm,
think that children like love you and see you as you are.
mm,
And as we grow older, like we have so many expectations and projections and stories
mm,
about ourselves that aren't actually there. So the way my son loves me, and obviously now he's talking and walking and singing, like even when he was a newborn, the way they love you is
mm,
so pure and is how you deserve to be loved. Like he's
mm,
teaching me how to love myself.
mm,
He gives me grace.
mm,
I just wrote about this actually. I should email it to you.
Where are you writing these things? Do you have a blog online or you just
No,
keep
I should. I'm like, maybe I should read it. It's just a page long. I could read it here and you could cut it out if you want.
Yes. Yes,
I'll,
please.
yeah, I'll read it because it's very much in line with this question. And I'll give you a little context. I just wrote it last weekend. So, Ron was out of town. He was in Dallas for his sister's birthday, and I decided to stay back with Ronan. And his school was closed for a couple of days, so I wasn't working, and I was home with him. And we have community here in Denver, but we don't have family in town, and so like it is very much just like us, our little tight knit family. And I had a very human moment where I was like, he wasn't gonna take a nap, and I was tired. And I didn't act on how frustrated I was or how short of patience I felt, but I felt a fire building in me. Like I wanted to scream, like I wanted to lash out, and I didn't. And even though I didn't, because I even felt like that for a moment, I felt like I had failed him. Even just the thought of being angry with him to me felt like a failure because my love for him feels so my love for him feels so pure that to feel anything but perfect for him feels wrong. And
Mm,
so like this is what that writing was about. I titled it For When You Need Grace because again, it's the theme of my life right now. Um and it kind of I think it actually ties together a lot of what we've talked about so far. So I'll
mhm,
it's about 2 pages. So um today was hard, as so many days have been for almost as long as I can remember now. There's something about being a 34-year-old woman, a wife, a mom, a college graduate, an accomplished professional, a homeowner, the list goes on, that makes me feel I should be immune to the pain of the past that seeps into the fabric of my present life. While I'm committed to the notion that suffering is inevitable, I seem to heap more on, like an insatiable kid at a dessert bar, a glutton for punishment. My shame dictates that if I'm not torturing myself, then I've taken a wrong turn. There's a voice in my head I can't seem to turn off. The confirmation bias seeks to validate that I am in fact worthless, horrible, less than, deserving of whatever awful thing lurks around the corner. Most days I don't identify with the feeling, but when I do, it's all consuming. A tidal wave of emotion, a roller coaster I'd give anything to get off. I want to lean into the wave, to bring a tender and gentle flame into the storm, a small wisp of grace, but the storm rages on. I can't find the light inside me when the darkness grows insurmountably. You are a terrible wife, a terrible mother, a no good employee, no dreams, hopes, aspirations, or goals for the future, only wasted space. Who let this voice in? There are so many versions of myself to hold 8, 12, 17, 25, 30. Each one so deserving of love, grace, compassion. But why not the version who I see before me in the mirror today? There's an urgency to my criticism of myself. It's as if to be kind to myself might kill me. It's like risking being flawed means drawing my last breath here on earth. And there are so many lessons that deeply condition me to be in the never ending fight mode of perfectionism. I want to let go. I have to let go. Every version of the girl I am depends on it. At 8, your world was flipped upside down. The love of a parent, one of two who brought you into existence, proved itself to be fragile, like dust in the wind. It was earth-shattering. There was no way to recover. Mom's cries in the thick, heavy air of the night, a brother behind bars, and you left alone, cold brass key in hand and book bag full of dreams. The comfort of school, the loneliness of home, the void in your heart. No matter what mom did, no matter how she may have equipped you to work through the weightiness, you were never the same. Gone were the days of childhood, of innocence. You, without any choice, were thrust into a world where to be mature, obedient, easy, and good would mean that you might avoid breaking the heart of someone around you and that you might avoid being abandoned again. 12. The person you clung to like a life raft in the aftermath of the earthquake finds someone new to hold on to. Who are you? Where do you fit in? You're the third wheel no one wanted. Fall in line or fall in line. Find peace in the abyss of solitude. There's nowhere else to be. 17. Catastrophic level loss. Proof that to step one toe out of line means your whole world will be decimated. The worst thing you can imagine will happen. Be good or else. Nothing happens for a reason unless it does, and you are the reason. 25. Burn it down. Leave them before they can leave you. I'll never be perfect, but I'll be alone. Nothing can hurt me if I leave first. 30. Hope for the future. First time tragedy. Hope is futile. Should have been better. And here we are today. Today I spent the day with you in all your tenderness and innocence. We wake up and cuddle in bed. Cheerios, apple juice, and Little Bear. I jumped out of bed and we chased Lemmy around the neighborhood. At first worried, then laughing breathlessly. I clean, you ask to play. We wait for friends, then buzz around. You and he eat lunch that I prepared. Chicken nuggets, berries red and blue, peas and ranch. There's an easiness about the day, except for the storm in my mind. So much uneasiness building. Where's your dad? Do our guests see the dirt? What do they think of the neighborhood? Did I forget to look at the pregnancy test? When will my shoulder stop aching? How will I make it through the day? Do they like me? Do you like me? Am I enough? I check my watch. It's getting late. I see you're tired, but anxiously avoid saying I'm anxious. It's time for sleep. You need it. I need it. They finally go and you resist. I don't have it in me. I'm raging inside. I want to scream but can't. For the next 2 hours, I hate myself for even coming close to anything but pure and perfect love for you. If there's one thing you've taught me, it's that I'm in need of reparenting. I need to hold the girl with the key, the girl who didn't want to be the wheel, the girl who stood with eyes to the freezing gray sky. I am her and she is me. The same kindness I showed you, I must show her now. I would give anything to see myself through your eyes.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Mm, mm. I feel like you just painted so many worlds and how rich and intimate they each were.
Thank you.
And the thought that was coming to mind is I know so many people will relate to aspects that you're of what you're speaking to. And then
Hmm.
I found myself in it too. And I was like, ah, okay.
I know I appreciate that. It's so specific to my life and like
Mhm,
I didn't necessarily intend to share it, but it really has felt like the backdrop for everything I've been saying during our
mhm,
time together, and so it felt timely to share. And um yeah, I find that like time is something we talk about a lot as
mhm,
people. Like I'm finding myself just in social spaces, even with you, like, oh, we met 4 years ago, or being at work and thinking of years past and being like, oh man, the time goes by. And like time is such like something that brings us together as people. This is such like a big thought I'm having. So
mhm,
I'm gonna try to make it make sense. But like the one thing we all have in common, I would say, there's a lot, but the one thing that I know is true is that we don't get more time.
mhm,
Like the time we have is the time we have.
mhm,
And also, I see time as happening like all at once.
mhm,
And that is so healing to me. That even to think that like my hardest day and my happiest day are happening at the same time, even though that's a very strange thing to reconcile, it really helps me to have grace
mhm,
and to hold space for the fact that of course it makes sense I'm hard on myself.
mhm,
Of course it makes sense that I feel deeply flawed. I had to make sense of abandonment and loss and grief and loneliness and heartache at such a young age and by myself that like my underdeveloped mind was trying to make sense of things that didn't make sense, that didn't
mhm,
happen for a reason. One of my
mhm,
biggest pet peeves. I'm sure lots of people who've experienced loss or, you know, infertility have been told like everything happens for a reason. And
Mm,
that, in my humble opinion, is not true. There's
mm,
so much that happens in the world that is for no reason.
mm,
It's just chance. And so it helps me to know that, like, yeah, that time is happening all at once.
mm,
And that, like, I don't know, it even goes back to like me walking out the door on September 27th, 2021.
mhm,
I had just had a DNC and I was heartbroken. And
mhm,
walking out of the same hospital September 27th, 2022 with a healthy newborn child.
mhm,
Like it just like confirms to me that like time is just like this. And that doesn't make going through the hard things easier, but it has totally been the thing that has kept me alive until this day.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
mm. I don't have the words for all the things that I'm feeling.
Oh, thank you.
I would
Well, thanks.
say a word that did come up is reverence,
Hmm.
and it's reverence. I would say the reverence is toward this life and the experiences that we have.
Hmm.
Almost this way of cherishing all the things, even the really hard and painful ones, or maybe especially
Yes,
painful.
especially.
Yeah.
And I think I said that before you started recording this just now,
Mhm,
like, especially the hard ones,
mhm,
especially the hard ones. There's
mhm,
so much beauty and there's so much to be gained and learned from and
mhm,
connected to in the hard times. And like, I
mhm,
say that like it sounds so like hippy dippy. Yes, we love the hard stuff. Like, I get that if you're going through it right now as you listen to this, you're like, F you. I don't agree with that. But I, you know, I recently connected with, and I'm probably going to end up sharing this with her. And so
mhm,
shout out if she's listening. I recently connected with, and this has actually been part of my healing. I
mhm,
recently reconnected with my best friend of 10 years. This was my very best friend, like a soul, to me in my mind, she was like a soul assignment. Like
mhm,
she and I were connected on a
mhm,
different level.
mhm,
Platonic friendship, not a relationship, but this was my
mhm,
best friend from 15 to 25. And here's a perfect example of things not happening for a reason. And I'm gonna come back to the thought I was just having, Natalie, which was about oh my God, going through hard things and hard things being beautiful. And so I'm having many thoughts at once, as I often do. So Kiki was my best friend for 10 years. And when my mom died, the day she died in February of 2008, I was 17, and it was obviously a devastating day. And I moved in with her and her mom and her family on that day.
mhm,
My whole life, I was like, I was going this way, and now my life was going a different way. And I moved in with her and her family that day, and they were beautiful and loving and caring and kind, but our relationship took a toll.
mhm,
I just overnight was folded into the fabric of her family, and it
mhm,
was beautiful, but also very hard.
mhm,
It was hard on their family, it was hard on me, and I could see no way forward. After a certain number of years, I felt so deeply ingrained in this family unit. And at the time I got engaged, I just felt like I needed to separate myself from this unit and from this time in my life and to really move on from this trauma and this experience. And I didn't know how to do it other than to just cut all ties with no
mhm,
explanation.
mhm,
I didn't know how to let go. I didn't have the foresight to let go with love or to sort of like break up with a platonic friend, which is like something we don't talk a lot about. Like,
mhm,
I needed a break and I didn't know how to get it because it wasn't just my relationship with her, it was my relationship with her and her mom and her siblings and her uncles and aunts and cousins. And I was just so
mhm,
enmeshed in this family.
mhm,
And it broke my heart. Even though I felt it's what I needed to do, I was heartbroken by it. And for
mhm,
years and years, I thought of her. And in 2020, around the time I came to the realization I wanted to start a family, it was actually not around the time, it was the exact same time. I was doing like a retreat
mhm,
workshop, you know, style course. And I was like, I need to reach out to her. I have to make amends. And I just was not ready to do it.
Mhm.
And that's a, you know, a different conversation altogether. But anyway, I continue to think about it, for the last 5 years. And at the beginning of this year, I was like, I need to reach out. I have to apologize. I have to make amends. I need to close the loop on this. There's this open, this energetic loop that's like there's no closure, there's no beginning, there's no ending, and it's just dangling out there for me. And
Mhm.
it was with her and actually a couple of other friends as well, who I was not quite as like close with necessarily, but I felt that I needed to apologize. And I wrote out, I've been writing a lot. I wrote letters, hand wrote letters to each of them,
Mhm.
um and I held on to them for 4 months. I wrote them at the beginning of the year. And after my last, this was in April, I got my period and I was devastated. I was
Mhm.
like deeply, deeply depressed that it was another month to not be pregnant. And I was like, no, I need to send these right now. And a big theme of the letters was like, basically, I'm sorry that I couldn't be who you needed me to be at that time. I recognize that who I was and how I showed up or didn't hurt you. And basically that life is so short that like what I can't leave this unsaid. I need you to know this. And there was
Mhm.
no expectation of like being connected or like starting a new friendship or relationship, but just like I need you to know this and I hope you can receive it. Um and she reached out to me on Facebook right away and was just like
Mhm.
in such deep gratitude for the fact that I had reached out. And we've been in pretty much constant contact ever since. And it's been such a gift to me. But it's been this really interesting experience of somebody who I was very intimately connected with, who knew me at a time in my life when nobody else knew me,
Mhm.
which at that time was sort of painful because I wanted to put that part of my life behind me, but which now is like, wow, you really see me. You
Mhm.
see me in a way that other people can only see me because I'm explaining to them what I lived through. You
Mhm.
actually lived through that with me.
Mhm.
And it's been like beautiful. And there's been its own brand of grief with it because I've
Mhm.
expressed to her like, oh my God, now that we're reconnected, I'm like grieving for the years that feel lost, which they're obviously
Mhm.
not lost,
Mhm.
but like just the wondering, the what if, like about our friendship. And so reconnect, being friends for 10 years and then not talking for 10 years and reconnecting now, it's like us having this experience of like, oh, this is everything that's happened. These people are married, these people are separated, this person has passed away, these people have children, I have children, like these are their names, this is what they're like.
Mhm.
This sort of like rapid fire accelerated, like, let me catch you up on my life. And it's so
Mhm.
thrilling and exciting and wonderful. And also, it's like, wow, I'm giving you the highlight reel also of like a lot of hard stuff, which includes
Mhm.
like the death of like my husband and I have lost many family members and friends in the last 10 years. And obviously, also with pregnancy losses. And,
Mhm.
um, she was like, you are, said something to the effect of like, you are so resilient. Like, life hasn't been easy for you. Like, you've been through
Mhm.
so much.
Mhm.
And from a lot of people, I wouldn't accept that. I don't
Yeah.
care for anybody to label my life as hard or that I'm resilient because I'm like, no, we don't need to do that. But she knows me and she lived that experience with me. And from her, it was very validating to hear that. And I responded to her like, you're right. Like, I actually wouldn't change one thing about it.
Mhm.
And maybe on my worst day, to people listening who are like, what do you mean you wouldn't change the hardest things? On my worst day, of course, I would be like, no, give me a new life, hate this one. But when I'm really like my best self and when I'm like the vibrations are here and I'm like my truest self, I wouldn't change one thing about what I've been through. I
Mhm.
really do believe on some level that I chose to be here and I chose to live these experiences and that there's so much to be gained
Mhm.
from my lived experience. And I don't even know, I wouldn't even know the girl sitting next to me or in front of me if she was here and didn't have the life that I have. I wouldn't even recognize her. And I
Mhm.
think it's a way of honoring and loving myself for who I am and where I am. And it's
Mhm.
kind of like, in a way, it's having grace. It's sort of like, I see you and I honor you and I wouldn't change one thing about you.
Mhm.
And she's like, wow, that's incredible. She was like, that is absolutely amazing because I don't know that everyone gets there. And my prayer or hope for people who are going through something hard or have been through something hard is like that they can get to the point where they love that part of their experience because it's
Mhm.
made them who they are and it's brought them to where they always hope to be. Like I often think of this sort of concept also, it's kind of like the butterfly effect, right? Where I'm like, if I didn't go through every pregnancy loss, I would have never known my son. And I feel this child like chose me as his mom. And to
Mhm.
never have known him would have been a great loss for me, even if I couldn't have conceived of this person I never knew, who I was
Mhm.
meant to knew. No, I just know that everything happened in a way so that I could meet him.
Mhm.
And so yeah, all that is to say there is just so much beauty in the hard stuff, and I really do wish more people would talk about the hard things because
Mhm.
why are we like keeping up appearances? It's
Yeah.
not fun. It's not to me, and this is so like my Cancer sun and my Pisces rising. It's like I don't want to connect on like what kind of car you drive or what your house looks like or what clothes you're wearing. I want to connect on like tell me like the hardest thing you ever went through and how you got through it. That's what
Mhm.
I want to know.
Mhm.
That's it. And I've always been that. That's me to a T. Let's dive into the deep.
Wow. Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that.
Thank you.
Mm, the thought that's coming to mind, it's like the grief rituals where there's so much beauty making. There's like an altar with flowers, there are
Mm,
candles, there's song. It's like connecting the heart with beauty.
mm,
So even in the words that you use to describe, I think it was like the childbirth experience, like how painful and traumatic that was, and the weaving of the story. And all throughout, as we've been together, I think your way with words, I experience healing in a
mm,
part of the story that you shared because I recognized myself. And so it made me think of a part of the intention that you've been holding, right? So that in the storytelling, there's mutual healing. You are healed and the listener is healed.
mm,
And I know so many people. There have been several people who listen to the podcast, and in having a conversation with them, they would say, this podcast has meant so much to me for so many years. And I'm like, really?
mm.
Because I'm convinced that it's just me listening. that all the
Aw.
thoughts are just bots or me refreshing the page to check that something is correct. And so even if we never hear from anyone, I feel confident that something has shifted in someone because I can say that something shifted within me because I could see
Mm.
myself.
That would be my only my only hope because I'm gonna share one more thing. So this is something my mom was a bit of a poet. I found some of her poetry she wrote. I
Mhm.
wouldn't know exactly when. I don't think it was dated. And this is not from her, but this is something I found before my husband and I made the decision to move across the
Mhm.
country
Mhm.
several years ago. And I'm betting I have shared this with you. Um, but it's sort of in the spirit of what you just said so beautifully and sort
Mhm.
of what my hope is for listeners to this conversation if there if there are any. If
Mhm.
anyone wants to hear me blab. So I found this and she had basically taken a poem written by Ralph Waldo Emerson and rewrote it in her own writing. I'll show you just because
Mhm.
can we see? I'm like doing the influencer, like showing you my makeup. It's blurred, but what is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded.
Mm,
And those last words, they resonate with me so deeply. And I really do see them as being like the driver in my life, personally, professionally, like in my relationships on every level.
mm,
To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded,
mm,
and to have lost her, to have lost her at 48 years old. She just missed her 49th birthday. It also felt like a message from her that like maybe I left too soon,
mm,
but like her gift to me was that like she made it so that my life was easier than
mm,
hers was for her. Um, Even if in some ways it was made hard by her leaving, like she passed the baton to me. What she
mhm,
gifted me was a life that was easier than hers, and her
mm,
life was worthwhile because my life was made easier.
mm,
And obviously that's like a great example for me, but like to people who
mm,
might listen to this, who might find value in this, or to who, to however this might resonate with, it's like if you breathed easier even for one moment of something I shared, my
mhm,
my work my whole life has been worthwhile. Like,
mm.
and I know that sounds like so excessive, but I really believe it's like um it's true. I don't know. It's true for
I
me.
always thought that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. How are ways that you honor your mother?
Oh my God, Natalie, I'm gonna have to email you another thing I wrote. So I wrote something about her recently. I've been writing, I guess creative writing a lot. I don't even know what you'd call it. Maybe it's journaling.
Mhm,
And I'd had like right now I'm looking at this like little altar I have, like a photo of her and some other things. And so I do that. And I always celebrate the anniversary of her passing, which maybe that's like a Catholic thing. I don't know if a lot of people celebrate like a death date, but I always think of her then
mhm,
and her birthday and like certain smells and sounds. And I
mhm.
talked to my son about her and
Mm,
um anyway, over time I had had these like psychic feelings about my mom where I was like, oh, if she were here, we would like that. And one of the things was Harry Styles. I was like, oh, my mom would. There's two songs in particular that remind me of my mom, and I'm like, yeah, we would be Harry Styles fans together, like.
mhm,
And it was this whole idea of like her being a Harry Styles fan with me that sort of like launched me into doing this writing, which was very
mhm,
like psychic. Like I just sat down and in 20 minutes, just like that other thing I shared, I just like wrote out I called it daydreaming of you. And I basically dreamed who she is to me in my mind now as somebody who's alive because she is very
mhm,
much alive to me. And like I don't know that I don't know. It goes back, it's very like hippy dippy. I don't know, like very spiritual of me to be like, oh, we all these converging timelines. And yes, like she's passed on, but I don't believe that like death is like our final form. And I do believe that there in some version of reality that this is who she is. And
mhm,
I basically wrote about that she was able to find healing for herself and that
mhm,
she was able to like find ways to live with her depression and travel the world and make friends and love and accept herself and like really and like very beautiful language is like describing like her creative endeavors and like how she was a creator of magic and like
mhm,
it was like bringing her back to life for me because it's like
mhm, mhm,
I think this happens for a lot of people. I'm not the only person, the only buddy, the only person who has lost somebody in a tragic way. Like if you ever lose somebody to an illness, to Alzheimer's or dementia or cancer, you really do see the body deteriorate and like it sort of can rob you of like those final memories of you with your loved one. And for me, that was true with my mom. Her depression was so intense that it's hard to think back on the fond and fun and joy-filled memories we had together because it was sort of
Mhm.
tainted by that final experience of her in those months leading
Mhm.
up to
Mhm.
her death. And so this was like a way that I could bring her back to life. And
Mhm.
yeah. Um yeah. So
Mhm.
I feel like that's a way that I honor her. And yeah, going back to your question about like lessons and gifts of like being a mother, like she was a creator of magic, and my husband often says this about me. He's like, "You have a way of making things feel so special."
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm like posting to the internet about look at these like bunny shaped pancakes I made for Easter, but like those are the types of things that I like to do that I feel like honor my mother and that heal my inner child and that bring joy to my family and
Mm.
like are so small. No one will, someday I'll be long gone and no one will be like, oh, remember when Brigid like hand painted a banner, because you got a new job? But like those are the things that I feel like really connect me to her and that like fill life with joy and meaning and magic. And I
Mhm.
don't know, it's really those little things for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, mm, I want to do a time check. What's your time? Well, really, I want to know if we have enough time to read it. I have enough time, and I want to.
Oh my God. Natalie, wow. You're like so sweet that you're like, do you have this on a blog? And I'm like, no, it's so funny because I wrote these things and I never intended to share them. And like,
Mhm.
it's fitting in so perfectly with our conversation that I'm like overjoyed and so like grateful to be able to share them and would love to. But it's so funny because there's been a couple people who I've been like, can I read this to you? And I'm mostly just wanting to like read it because I'm like, this is a way to keep my mom alive. This is a way for me to express a part of myself that I feel like I otherwise couldn't have. And so it's like
Mhm.
a way of letting people into like a part of me that I couldn't otherwise explain. And
Mhm.
in doing it, people have been like, wow, I'm so touched by this. And I'm so surprised that people are touched because in my mind, it feels so specific to me.
Mhm.
But yes, I would love to share it. So I always take the day that my mom passed away, like the anniversary of her passing off. I just don't work. It's like a personal holiday. I just believe that I
Mhm.
need to rest and
Mhm.
honor that day. And so this year, and I have my own rituals with that, which are sort of varying, but mostly it's just about like slowing down and like nurturing myself and doing what I need to do for myself as a way of honoring her because I think she didn't always have the time or space to do that. And I think, like I said, it's part of her legacy that I get to do that. So
Mhm.
I wrote this February on the 25th. It was 17 years since she passed away. And um the anniversary of her passing this year marked the it was like 17 years since she passed and I was 17 when she died. So I'm now like entering this new time of like more years without her than with her, which felt to me like I don't know. It felt like a milestone. And so it made it even more special that I felt like I could like breathe life into like who I know she would be, who she is, like in another reality. So this is called Daydreaming of You. You are you and I am me. Nothing has changed, only the passing of time and the fact that you are still here. The only consolation for your absence, I've realized, is that I get to imagine who you would be, what our relationship would be like, and so the bittersweetness of your untimely departure is that I get to daydream. You are vibrant and so alive. You have moved somewhere coastal, probably Maine or maybe Oregon. You live in a rented cottage near the sea and come visit as often as you can. You've let your hair grow long and gray, silver in the sunlight, and wrinkles around your eyes and smile have grown more apparent, proof of a life filled with joy. To get to where you are, you made some changes. You divorced your ex-husband and sold all your things. You spent some time traveling the world and finding yourself. You collected art, friends, even a tattoo or three. You participated in things like Landmark and got a good therapist who helped you make sense of the pain of your past. She supported you in releasing the guilt and shame so that you could live comfortably with your depression. Through that work, you figured out how to love your son and his illness and to be with the challenges of it without taking on so much responsibility. You love coming to Denver and will frequently make plans to visit us last minute so you can see your favorite son in law and grandson. You even learned how to ski and love to snowshoe. You make the most of the Rockies. When you visit, we dance and sing. You love to pull out your old records and teach Ronan about your favorites: Kansas, Bob Marley, Fleetwood Mac, the Beach Boys, The Who. When chatting with Ron, you laugh and hug, recounting tales from the 70s that you never told me. You wink and tease that you two are best friends. I pretend to be hurt, but it fills my heart to witness you seeing my life, being loved the way you always deserve to be. When you come, you bring with you Irish bread made from great grandma Mary's recipe using butter you churned yourself, a new skill you are proud to have acquired. You spend time reading with Ronan and doing crafty projects, recreating your hand painted signs for our soon to be backyard garden. This year, you promised to teach us your secrets so we can have sunflowers as beautiful as yours. You usually come 4 times a year: your birthday, my birthday, Ronan's birthday, and Christmas, which all happen to coincide with pagan festivals. A recent thing we've discovered is a passion of ours that we eagerly celebrate together. On Ronan's birthday, you sing to him in the morning and have the table adorned with a hand painted plate and tablecloth you made for him. You practice speaking French with him and show him the old French cartoon Muzzy. You tell him stories of how your parents met, how intelligent, earnest, and worldly they were. We disagree on some things. You still prefer hot tea, and I love cold coffee. You prefer to bike everywhere, and I want to be chauffeured in style. When we shop, you point out things I might like and still get flustered when I don't agree. No hurt feelings anymore. We just laugh and laugh. I'm easier on you and joke about what a terror I was as a teenager under the reign of your ex. You often compare life to the ocean, filled with ups and downs, and comment that you're so glad to have had more ups than downs. We close our evenings reading. You used to knit, but have learned to crochet. You make small crocheted animals and donate them to women's shelters. You do all you can to spread joy. You still don't like cheese or peanut butter, but I've slowly helped you consider reconsidering. We excitedly make plans for Christmas. You plan to come back and teach me how to make Grandma's butter cookies. You're thinking of renting a Santa suit to surprise Ronan. I think it's silly, but humor you because your youthful exuberance is practically infectious. When you come back for the holiday, you surprise me with a gift you've been so excited to give. In it, a note sharing with me the beauty of having a daughter, and a necklace, a disco ball, and a reminder to never dull my shine for anyone, especially not a man. Inside the envelope are 2 tickets to see Harry Styles. We love Harry Styles. We cry happy tears. We dress up in sparkly dresses, feather boas, platform boots, chunky necklaces, and prepare to dance the night away. We sip champagne and cry and laugh and wish the night would last forever. You leave the next day after making your famous pancakes. We have a group hug and give butterfly kisses. We load up the car and drive you to the airport. You make easy conversation in your sing-songy voice. I'm happy you came, but always sad to say goodbye. Fortunately, in my daydream, the goodbye is never forever. It's always I'll see you soon. See you soon, mommy.
Mm, wow. What's your mom's name?
Bernadette.
Bernadette.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Thanks for letting us see and experience Bernadette. So beautiful.
Thank you for letting me share. It's such a gift. I'm sure as you're familiar, part of grief is like the grief of like those you know and love, like as life carries on that don't get to know these people who you loved
Mm,
so deeply. And so to share them is like to have them be present with you. And so
mhm,
it's really a gift, Natalie. You are a gift to me. This has
mm,
been such a joy.
mhm, mhm. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Anything
you.
that you'd like to close with? I was about to ask anything that hasn't been said or that's left unsaid, but there's always so much. So,
So much left unsaid. Um, so many things to say. I, yeah, I think just what's present for me is like the question you asked about like the challenges and gifts of like motherhood. And it so converges with like me seeing myself as a child and giving myself grace as a little girl and as now,
Mhm.
just as I, am trying to practice now. And that's like, I wish I could see my son how he sees me and also how I see him. And
Mm,
so I don't know. What I'm feeling like is left unsaid is like, just like I get to be like a magic maker and that's such a gift. Like, I also get to say the things I needed to hear as a child to him. Like, I just said to him this morning, he's such a sweet child. I do feel like we're very spiritually connected. He's such a sweet child and he's 2.5 and he's very into feelings and like he's very expressive and very clear about how he's feeling, which I'm so proud of. And I do feel like is innate. I haven't taught him this. Like I do feel like
mhm,
it's who he is. And when he's crying, he'll say, I have tears. I'm feeling sad. I have
mhm,
tears, Mama. I'm feeling so sad. And we'll hold space for his sadness. And when
mhm,
he's happy, he'll say, I'm so happy. Are you happy, Mama?
mhm,
And he often will check in not only about how he's feeling, but about how we're feeling. So he'll say, are you happy? Are you sad? And I was feeling like a little bit frustrated about something silly in the car this morning driving to school. And I was like, I really don't like when you do this thing, whatever. And I was not like chastising or anything. I was having a boundary
mhm,
and which I think are important. And a little while later I was quiet and he was like, are you happy, Mama? I was like, I am
mhm,
happy. And then a moment passed and I was like, I turned the music down because we're always listening to music, musical
mhm,
households. And I was like, Ronan, I need to tell you something. Because I believe children understand. I don't get people who talk to kids differently than adults. I'm like, I'm talking to you like a person because you're a person. And I said, I want you to know that no matter how mommy and daddy feel, whether we're happy or sad or mad or whatever, excited, whatever, it's
mhm,
never going to have anything to do with you. How I feel is not your responsibility.
mhm,
And that just like healed me.
mhm.
Whether or not he needed to hear that didn't matter. It was like I was saying it to my little self.
Wow. Mm.
That I was like,
Wow.
he- I think sometimes we don't say things
Mhm,
to children because we're like, they're not going to get it. And it's like,
mhm.
you're not the judge of what you think they're going to understand. They're
Yeah,
understanding.
yeah,
And I needed him to know that no matter how I feel,
yeah.
nothing he does will impact that for better or worse.
Mm,
And the same is true for me loving him. And I
mm,
tell him that too. I'm like,
mm,
I love you if you're happy or sad or mad or grumpy. I love you every way you are.
mhm,
And I get to heal. It's funny that I'm practicing being gracious because I think I can be so prescriptive and so black and white about how things need to be done that often I don't do them. I think a lot of folks who are like struggling with perfectionism or like black and white thinking are the same way, where you won't do something because you think it needs to be a certain way. And I think about being gracious with myself in that way. Like,
mm,
I'm practicing it. I think I'm doing it. And then I'm like, no, I'm doing this in every moment of being
mm,
a mother to my son.
mm,
I'm being gracious with a version of myself.
mhm,
Um, and so it really is such a gift.
mhm,
And to anyone who's listening, who's, just longing to be a parent who's dealing with loss or infertility or, secondary infertility, maybe you already have a child, like wherever you are with this, like
mhm,
however you feel is okay. Like maybe you too, I don't know, maybe you didn't even make it this far and you're like, I can't listen to this girl. Like I've had so many moments like that where I'm like, this doesn't resonate with me. I'm not ready to hear this,
mhm,
like wherever you are is okay. You're exactly where you need to be. and like you are a whole and perfect human, like exactly as you are.
Mm.
You're, who you need to be and you're where you need to be. That's it.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had so much energy coming up as you shared about that reparenting moment because it was just like going backwards to the lineage and all the times that they didn't hear that, right? All
Yeah.
they felt as though who they were was having an impact on someone else, right? Where there wasn't that separation between some impact that someone is experiencing and just who they are at their core.
Mm.
And I'm remembering mentors share that when we heal ourselves, we heal the lineage. And when the lineage becomes healed, then the future generation receives that healing. So it was this experience of like, we've gone back so we can go forward. And in going back, the going forward is more powerful, more liberated. Mm.
Yes. Yes to all that. And I think, and I feel like maybe I've said this 10 times throughout this conversation, but when it's like when words just like don't suffice. You're like, I'm trying to get this message through. I hope it's coming through. I know how it feels in my body. I'm like, where are the words to put together exactly what I mean? But it's that the grace I have for myself about how I've pushed through and clawed and climbed through like such grief and hardship and sadness of like wanting to have a family and it not happening how I thought it might and it being fraught with like a lot of sadness and loss.
Mhm.
I like I lost my train of thought. I just and how hard I was on myself before I even made the decision that I wanted to be a mother. It's like all of that is because I care so much.
Mhm.
Like I can't fail at like being a mother. I can't fail as a woman who's trying to conceive because like the amount I care
Mhm.
is like a success.
Mhm.
It speaks for itself.
Mhm.
The conscientiousness that I bring into the experience of being a woman in the world, of being someone who's trying to conceive, of being a mother, is it brings with it such a level of awareness that I can't fail at it because
Mhm.
I'm in constant observation.
Mhm.
So even though sometimes that observation includes like a critical voice,
Mhm.
I've already succeeded by virtue of like caring and witnessing and observing and holding space for. There's like no failure. Not like there is no failure. You know? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's where I would like us to end. I don't want any more questions. I want us to end with that.
I think that's great.
Mm, Brigid, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And when
Yeah.
you were sharing about Ronan, I'm like, I want to meet this human in person.
I know. I know. I need to send you some. I'll spam you with photos. He's just so special. I feel like it's really a gift to get
Mhm.
to witness like who he is and
Mhm.
how his life and personality and world is just like unfolding in front of me and it's so special.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Beautiful. Yeah, I
And
feel
you are totally part of that. Like I've said to you, fairy godmother.
that's what I've been thinking. Like
And
it's
now it's on the record. So if this exists in the world. Someone will know the story of how you were a part of that.
I've actually had similar stories of like
I believe it.
a visualization, and then I heard some weeks later, like, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, okay.
Magic. It's
It's
magic.
opening the way so that whatever needs to come through gets to come
I
through.
believe it. I
Yeah.
so believe it. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your story and for reminding us of grace and graciousness and just
Mm,
all the different ways in experiencing motherhood as a parent, the connection to your own mother and how you honor her, and
mm,
mothering yourself at all the different stages. Just so much wisdom. Thank you for all of that.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, y'all. This has been another episode of the Preparing for Pregnancy After Loss podcast. And you know where to find me on Instagram at The Birth Warriors. My email is hello@nataliefacey.com. And my website is nataliefacey.com. And all of those things will be in the show notes.
Thank you.